Okay. Okay. So, can you just make sure to speak in complete sentences so I'm not part of the video and everyone knows what you're talking about?
Okay.
Okay. And so, could you introduce yourself?
I am Joseph Backholm. I'm the Executive Director of the Family Policy Institute of Washington and also Chairman of the Preserve Marriage Washington campaign.
Can you talk a little bit about those two organizations?
Sure. Well, the Family Policy Institute is a educational public policy group that is a continuing organization. We work on marriage, life, religious freedom, and parental rights. And Preserve Marriage Washington was created specifically for the Referendum 74 campaign in response to recent legislation.
And I was researching a lot about Preserve Marriage Washington and the Family Institute, and the wording is the bill would redefine marriage. Can you kind of talk about that a little?
Well, yes, it will redefine marriage. The bill, the state law currently says, and this is the first line of the bill, says that marriage is a civil contract between a male and female. This bill would change that to say marriage is a civil contract between two persons. So it is a textbook redefinition of a term that has legal significance.
And why did you decide to file a referendum?
Because we don't believe, and I don't believe, that redefining marriage in this way is good as a matter of public policy, and also believe, perhaps more fundamentally, but equally as importantly, that the public deserves the right to vote on an issue like this.
So if the public were to vote in favor of it, would you be more open to the idea, or it's something that you would still not?
It won't change the merits of the argument. I mean, it won't change the fact that it's not good public policy. But at that point, you know, the debate has been had and then the decision has been made.
And what kind of reaction have you received from the community after you filed the referendum?
Personally, or like as a campaign? How do you mean that?
Both. I mean, have you gotten any negative feedback? I'm sure you've gotten a lot of positive feedback.
Well, there's certainly people who disagree with me, and so on an issue like this, you expect that there are going to be people on both sides of the issue. But I would say, from my perspective, people have been civil, and we understand that people are going to disagree. But the response from our side, those who are interested, has been very strong, and there's a great deal of interest in the issue. So I'm encouraged by the response in general, and also appreciative of the fact that, from my perspective, most of the dialogue has been fairly respectful, except for, you know, comment sections on blogs and things like that. But you just don't expect much from that.
And what would you say are your top arguments against allowing same-sex marriages?
There's a number of them, and it depends on who you're talking to. As a matter of policy, it's bad because it pretends that kids don't need moms and dads. One of the most meaningful differences between a heterosexual and a homosexual relationship is the ability or inability to provide a kid with a mother and father. That is a meaningful difference, and semantically, we should be able to recognize that while some things may be similar, that does not mean that they are the same. And our current language recognizes that these relationships are different. And redefining marriage in this way pretends that they are the same, and they are not the same. And the fact that one can provide a kid with a mother and father and one cannot provide a kid with a mother and father is a meaningful distinction. It also creates a really bad legal precedent, because the argument fundamentally is that, from the other side, is that our love and commitment is the same, therefore we deserve the recognition of marriage. And that's not a legally, and should not be a legally significant argument. And I would like to think that our legislators would have had better judgment, but clearly they did not. I think the public will. The fact that our love and commitment is the same, if we use that as the precedent for redefining marriage, we would have to come up with a different response for the other groups of people, other pairings that could come and say our love and commitment is the same. Marriage is restricted in 4 ways in Washington State. You can't marry somebody who's a minor, you can't marry somebody who's already married, you can't marry somebody who's a close relative, and you can't marry somebody of the same gender. any grouping within those 4 restrictions could say our love and commitment is the same. And if we are going to redefine marriage in one way based on the fact that their love and commitment is the same, on what basis do we deny the same recognition to one of the other groups or theoretical groups of people that would come and say our love and commitment is the same? So it's bad public policy. And there's also significant consequences as a result of this, because ultimately the point of this debate is not to achieve legal equality, because that is the status quo. Domestic partnerships already have all the rights and benefits of marriage. There is not a single benefit that will accrue to any individual in Washington state as a result of redefining marriage. So it has to be about something more than achieving legal equality. And that's where the risks to religious freedom and individual rights really becomes serious, because I do believe that it's not about marriage. If they were successful, it's not as if their legislative agenda would cease, that they would pack up their tents and say, hey, we've won, let's go home, because it's about much more than that. And what it's about is eradicating from the public sector any notion of the idea that there's a difference between heterosexuality and homosexuality. And because there is a conflict between these competing value systems, worldviews, that's why those of us who have a specific conviction about the issue, our ability to run our churches, run our nonprofit organizations, run our private businesses consistent with our belief system is very much at risk.
And you talked about, right now the status quo is domestic partnerships, and currently they are same-sex couples in a domestic partnership. They can, adopt children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think it's going to make that big of a significant difference after they're able to get married as far as children goes? Children having to have
Sure.
one mother and one father.
That argument is not that we have a requirement that children have a mother and father. It's that policy should recognize that that's good for kids to have a mother and father. And when we say that these different relationships are in every way identical, we are pretending, and I do mean the word pretending, we are pretending that they are the same in every way, because they're not the same in every way. And the most obvious way that they're different is that one relationship can provide both a mother and father and one cannot. And our public policy should recognize that we're not going to require it, but it's preferable if possible, and we want to encourage arrangements when children are raised by their mother and father, or at least a mother and father.
And so I've talked to both sides, the ones who support and oppose same-sex marriage, and the ones who support the same-sex marriage, they're argued that, the divorce rates are so high. What's the difference between having two moms or one mom, one dad divorced?
Well, again, if anyone is concerned about the divorce rate, it is because there's an admission in their concern over divorce that it's somehow preferable or ideal for divorce not to be occurring. That's why we think of that as a problem in any sense. And because we have a problem in one area, doesn't mean it's okay to exasperate that problem in another area. It's all fruit of the same tree, where we are acting as if the purpose of marriage is to validate the happiness of the adults inside the relationship. And that's why, when you're no longer happy in your marriage, why not get divorced? If the purpose of the institution in the first place is to satisfy my personal happiness or self-actualization or whatever it is that I'm looking for in life. And I don't think that should be the fundamental reason people get or stay married. It should be more significant than that. And in the same way, if we were to redefine marriage in this way, it would be because we are now assuming that the purpose of this institution is to make adults happy. And
so I looked on your website yesterday, and you guys have gathered about 56,000 signatures. Is that current right now?
Not anymore. That was yesterday. Yeah, we're about 60, I think, as of a couple hours ago when I saw it.
Oh, how optimistic are you guys that you'll get the necessary 150?
Failure is not an option. So when you do something like this, you're always concerned and you're terrified and you lose sleep about things that could go wrong. But we'll get there.
And just out of curiosity, have you ever personally known someone who is gay or been close to?
I know, sure.
Can you talk about your relationship with them, or what they've told you, if you guys have talked about the issue of same-sex marriage?
Of course. Okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, do they ever try to change your mind? Or
I try to change their mind. I try to convince gay people, and I actually, I hear lots of stories from people collecting petitions. There are lots of gay people who have signed our petition, because there are lots of gay people who are not nearly as worked up about same-sex marriage as the political lobby is, because they recognize that they are different, that they recognize that they have the right to make whatever living arrangements that they want, and they are free to do so and buy property and do all sorts of things together that anyone else could, but that doesn't mean it's marriage.
So you actually had gay people sign?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and I think there's not a recognition of the fact that even within, and to me this isn't necessarily about homosexuality, this is about what is marriage, but even within the gay community, there is a difference of opinion on this. And really it's a minority of, given the fact that less than 0.25% of Washington State has bothered to get involved in a domestic partnership, there's not throngs of people clamoring for same-sex marriages, even in jurisdictions where it's allowed. It's very, very uncommon, statistically.
And do you see gay rights or, same-sex marriage as a civil rights issue? How do you approach the subject?
I guess I'm not quite understanding.
Because people have made the argument that the gay community deserves the same type of rights and opportunities.
I agree with that.
Okay. And so, I mean, is same-sex
They
marriage...
do and have. They should and do have the same rights as every other person. The distinction that has to be made is that while individuals all deserve the same legal protection under the law, the same opportunity to pursue happiness and a career and, hobbies as everyone else, relationships are different, not because the individuals involved in the relationships are more or less worthy of love and respecting legal protection, but because relationships are always compared based on who's involved in the relationships. You have many relationships in your life. We have relationships with our kids and with our friends and with our classmates and our co-workers and our neighbors. We have lots of different relationships. The vast majority of those are not called marriages. And we recognize those relationships are different because the people involved in them are different. So while we recognize that every individual deserves the same legal protection, it should not require us to lose the intellectual capacity to recognize that relationships are different based on the individuals involved in those relationships.
Okay. And how much of your, I guess, could I ask about your religion?
You could.
Okay.
Clearly you would like to.
So what is your religion, or what faith are you?
I'm a Christian.
And do you have a specific denomination?
No.
Okay.
No.
And would you say that, I guess, your stance on same-sex marriage is influenced heavily by your faith? I
would say everyone's position on this issue and every issue is heavily influenced by their faith. And that is, everybody has convictions about what is right and what is wrong and what is true and what is false. That informs my position as it informs everybody else's position. Sometimes that comes from people's theology, sometimes that comes from people's romance novels or Dr. Phil or Oprah or wherever it is that they get their information. And so it's as true for me as it is for anyone else, yes.
And so we're interviewing a pastor down in Tacoma who has done, I guess, symbolic same-sex marriages. What do you think about symbolic same-sex marriages?
I think it's a free country, and people have the right to symbolically do many, many things. And if he wants to do that, then, more power to him. I, of course, as a theological matter, or, we might have a disagreement about whether that was something that is necessary or maybe preferable, but I wouldn't tell someone he shouldn't be able to do that. What I do think is that the state law, that our public policy, which speaks for all of us, should not say or pretend that those relationships are in every way the same. But if somebody wants to have a ceremony and, and go through that process, I'm not going to rain on anyone's parade.
So what happens if, not to be a downer, but if the referendum doesn't make it in November? Is there a next step? Have you thought?
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. This debate, regardless of who's successful in November, is not going to be over. I'm certain of that.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's all we had to ask you. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you feel is really important to this issue?
I don't know. Ginny, is there anything really important that was not covered? Do you think there's anything really important that was not covered?
I can't think of anything.
I don't know. No.
Really listening.
Okay, well then you're fine. I'm.
Yeah.
We're just. I'm trying to think of what else.
I just, of course, I'm a supporter of family policy and preserved marriage. And I have many homosexual